Jonah Cliff liked to say he had the best job in Emerald City. He walked, he talked, and he drank beer, professionally. 5 afternoons a week he shepherded visitors through the damp alleys of Seattle's Ballard district, badge on his denim jacket proclaiming Emerald City Craft Tours. By dusk, his voice would be a croak from recounting prohibition law, and his teeth faintly purple from all the stouts. Yet each morning he woke eager to introduce one more knot of tourists to the kaleidoscope of smells that rose from mash tuns and bitter kettles. That enthusiasm was why the brewmaster at Brink and Barrow, Dana Brink herself, had invited him to the Saturday night release party for their newest IPA, Hops of Hades. The email had been coy. Almost illegal amounts of experimental hops. Bring your palate and your metaphors. Dana knew Jonah's online write-ups could make a debut beer sell out in a week. She also knew he'd never give a dishonest rave. If he praised it, it would be because his tongue tingled with genuine wonder. So, on the last Saturday of March, Jonah stepped through Brink and Barrow's roll-up doors into a riot of neon tanks, string lights, and the scent of lemongrass and diesel, aromas he recognized as cryo-hops and Simcoe. A small stage perched near the bright tanks, framed by burlap hop vine garlands. Donna's team buzzed around in tie-dye lab coats, ferrying trays of sample glasses. A chalkboard announced Hops of Hades release 8 p.m. Experimental IBU off the charts. Please sign waiver. Tongue-tingling may occur. Jonah chuckled. Tongue-tingling was half the point. Then he saw the man himself, well, the woman herself. Dana Brink, platinum buzz cut, black lipstick, and a grin that could blast through stainless steel. She bounded over, colliding with him in a hug that smelled of grapefruit peel and barley sugar. You made it. I wouldn't miss it, Jonah said. You know I've mapped tonight's bus route around this moment. She handed him a dainty stemmed glass. Batch 001, still uncarbonated, but you'll get the idea. Jonah swirled the opaque burnt orange liquid, noticing particulates like golden dust motes. He raised it, breathed the aroma, pine forest struck by lightning, and tasted. First came the sweetness, but only a heartbeat later a rolling bitterness crested, paradoxically silky, like dark chocolate gone green. As it retreated, an afterglow remained. Papaya, white pepper, a glint of wintergreen. It wasn't just bitter, it was orchestral. Good Lord, he whispered. Dona rocked back on her heels, triumphant. We call those Hades hops, crossbred in Yakima, never before pitched into wort. The alpha acid number is obscene. When will the TTB send its SWAT team? He joked. She opened her mouth to reply, but a commotion to their left snagged their attention. An elderly couple stared at their sample cups, faces crimson. A brewer hurried over with water. Jonah frowned. Heat? Allergic reaction? The old man gasped, coughed, but then waved off help and laughed, proclaiming, That's a kick in the teeth, sonny. Crisis averted. The band tuned guitars, and more guests poured in. Bloggers with camera rigs, local chefs, hop farmers, even the lieutenant governor. Dana climbed on stage at 8 sharp, banging a mash paddle against a keg. Friends, freaks, connoisseurs, she shouted into a mic. 10 years ago, we opened Brink and Barrow with a pale ale that tasted like a meadow. Tonight, we'll torch that meadow and sow something new. Hops of Hades will be tapped at 9. Until then, mingle, talk shop, avoid lawsuits. Applause whooshed through the room. Jonah drifted toward a barrel table where 2 fellow guides, Alyssa and Ramon, were chatting. They traded tasting notes, gossiping about which breweries were switching to biodiesel or quietly selling out to nationals. Yet Jonah's gaze kept returning to Dana, who moved from knot to knot, her laugh sharp as carbonation, her eyes bright with a half-secret. Around 8:45 the stage lights dimmed. An assistant rolled out a dolly bearing a single six-tail keg wrapped in black duct tape. Another assistant followed with a polished old-fashioned beer stein carved from emerald glass. The symbolic first pour. Dana reappeared, mic in hand. "Ladies and gents, the small print on your ticket said ceremonial toast led by brewmaster. Lawyers insisted ceremonial because we don't want to kill you. I, however, have no such fear." Laughter. She hoisted the emerald stein. "To risking everything for flavour," a cheer thundered. The assistant tapped the duct-taped keg. Foam hissed. Dana filled the stein, raising it high. "First sip's mine, then we open the floodgates." Jonah angled forward, ready to gauge her reaction. Was she as awed by this beer as she hoped others would be? She took a long pull. Her face stayed neutral for an instant. Then her eyes widened, maybe euphoria or maybe shock. She lowered the stein, sucked in air, and swayed. The crowd's cheer shifted to murmurs. Dana's knees buckled. The stein slipped, striking the stage with a crystalline crack, but not shattering. Liquid fanned across the plank boards like amber blood. Dana's assistant lunged and caught her under the arms as she collapsed. Somebody killed the house lights. A single red exit sign glowed, making the stainless tanks look like sleeping titans. Silence fell, thick as mash. Jonah's tour guide reflexes kicked in. "Clear a path," he shouted, pushing toward the stage. By the time he climbed up, a nurse who happened to be present was feeling Dana's pulse. Her lips were pale, her breathing ragged. "Call 911, Jonah said, though several phones were already out. The nurse glanced up. "She's alive, but something's wrong. Could be allergic, could be cardiac." Dana's eyes fluttered open, found Jonah. She clutched his wrist with surprising strength and whispered, "Bitterness, under the floor." "What?" he asked, but her eyes rolled back. Sirens wailed in the distance. The paramedics arrived within minutes, transferring Dana onto a gurney, threading IV lines, wheeling her out. Guests filed into the parking lot, some crying, some swearing. The festival atmosphere had drained away, leaving the metallic taste of fear. Jonah stood beside Ramon at the curb. "Did she say anything to you?" Ramon asked. "She told me there's bitterness under the floor." Jonah rubbed his arm where Dana's fingernails had pressed half moons. She was delirious. Maybe. Yet Jonah couldn't shake it. Bitterness was a brewer's lexicon. International bitterness units measured hop impact. Under the floor could be literal or code. Dana was fiercely private about R&D. Maybe something dangerous had escaped the lab, an infected yeast vat, a chemical contaminant. Alyssa joined them. "Folks, news spread fast. The other breweries cancelled tonight's after-parties. We're heading to the Stumbling Monk to regroup. You okay?" Jonah nodded, but stayed where he was. The ambulance lights dwindled. Police taped off Brink and Barrow's entrance, interviewing staff. Jonah considered approaching an officer to relay Dana's cryptic phrase, but what would that accomplish? The cops would file it under gibberish. At midnight, he forced himself home. His apartment overlooked the canal, and moonlight silvered the water, but Jonah saw only Dana's blanched face, bitterness under the floor. He poured himself a pilsner, sipped, grimaced. Sudden bitterness coated his own palate, psychosomatic or memory of hops of Hades. He poured it out, went to bed, and dreamed of hop cones swelling into fists. By morning, the phone buzzed with messages. Social media speculated about poisoned beer, sabotage by big beer spies, maybe a disgruntled ex-employee. Brink and Barrow's official account posted, "Out of an abundance of caution, we've pulled hops of Hades from taps. The brewery remains closed as we collaborate with investigators." No word on Dana's condition. Jonah biked to Swedish Medical Centre and found a waiting room filled with brewers wearing beanies and flannel like camouflage. He located Dana's assistant, Leo, eyes rimmed red. "She's stable," Leo said. "Docs ran tox screens, nothing definitive yet. They want to observe her heart." "Did she eat anything weird? Allergy?" Leo shook his head. "She drinks from those tanks every day. Only difference was the Hades hops, and the old recipe she brewed 3 weeks ago, maybe. She said Hades needed to rest on some house cultures beneath the main floor." His voice cracked. "I feel like I missed something." Jonah's scalp prickled. "Beneath the main floor, like a barrel room?" "Yeah, the undercellar. Only Dana had the key." Bitterness under the floor. Jonah thanked him and left, pulse hammering. He had a notion half-formed. If something in that undercellar was corrupt, maybe it tainted the keg Dana drank. Maybe it still threatened others. And if the brewery remained taped off, the cops would take days before exploring every nook. They might not even know that room existed. Jonah pedaled to Ballard. Rain had started, a fine mist, the sky the colour of stainless steel. Brink and Barrow sat silent. The police tape fluttered. A single patrol car idled, but the officer inside scrolled her phone. Jonah stashed his bike, walked the block, found the alley he knew from tour routes, the brewery's original fire exit, rarely used. The door was heavy steel, but Jonah had seen Dana emerge there for smoke breaks. He tried the handle. Locked, obviously. He cursed himself for romantic impulsiveness. Then he noticed the doorframe's inner edge. Someone had wedged a tasting glass as a stopper, and during the commotion of the previous night, the door must have closed without latching. He pressed, and it opened with a sigh. Inside, the brewery smelled of cold fermenting beer. Glycol chillers hummed. Emergency lights glowed red. The main floor was empty except for yellow evidence markers near the stage. Jonah stepped carefully, avoiding them. He needed stairs down. Past the bright tanks, he found a narrow hallway, then a door marked staff only. Locked. He coaxed it with a credit card, tour guide, field skill. Click. Concrete stairs descended into darkness. He used his phone flashlight. The undercellar was small, walls lined with bourbon barrels. In the center stood a stainless conical fermenter, half the height of those upstairs. A post-it on its sample port read, "Had 17, dry hop 318, no agitation." Next to it, a workbench held jars of hop pellets, petri dishes, and a lab notebook. Jonah scanned the pages. Hand-drawn crosses indicated infection tests. Notes, Azaka and Hades blend stable. Housebrett sings, tropical funk. Warning, bitterness grows exponentially after 48 steer contact with oak lactones. He opened a barrel thief, drew a sip from the fermenter into a beaker, and smelled. Sharp citrus stung his nostrils, then something else, astringent like aspirin ground into grapefruit peel. He barely touched his tongue to the liquid and recoiled. The bitterness was monstrous, medicinal, void of pleasure. It clung like poison ivy. Dana's experimental hop marriage had gone wrong. Or maybe terribly right, depending on whether your goal was a beverage or a weapon. If that unholy bitterness had seeped into the ceremonial stein, Dana might have ingested a dose powerful enough to disrupt the nervous system. Some compounds at extreme concentrations could cause arrhythmia. He needed proof. He grabbed the lab notebook, but as he turned, a figure stood at the foot of the stairs. Leo. You shouldn't be here, the assistant said, voice husky. His eyes glimmered in Jonah's flashlight beam. Neither should you, Jonah replied. Leo took a step forward. I forgot to log yesterday's readings. Police barred me, but I had to check the barrels. Jonah held up the notebook. Did you know the bitterness spiked off the charts down here? Leo rubbed his temples. Dana was obsessed. She believed bitterness could be dimensional, like adding depth to sound. She said we'd discovered umami's evil twin. But yesterday morning I tasted that batch. It was harsh, sure, but not toxic. Something changed. You served that keg, Jonah said. A flash of guilt crossed Leo's face. She ordered me to. She trusted it. Jonah remembered the elderly couple coughing. Lesser doses could irritate but not collapse you. The barrel contact, he muttered. Oak lactones accelerated extraction overnight. Footsteps clanged above. Jonah killed his light. Voices. Seattle PD, anyone here? The patrol officer must have noticed the open door. Leo panicked. We have to hide. If they think our beer almost killed her. Jonah thrust the notebook into Leo's hands. Transparency now, or Brink and Barrow is finished. The cops are here for truth, not scapegoats. But Leo's eyes hardened. You don't understand. Investors already threatened to pull funding if Hops of Hades tanked. We borrowed against next year's production. If the police seize our inventory, we're bankrupt. Dana's dream dies, and so does my job. He lunged, trying to grab the notebook back. Jonah sidestepped, but Leo's elbow smack against a barrel. The stave cracked with a dull pop. Sour beer gushed, splattering their shoes. Jonah smelled vinegar and pineapple funk. Upstairs, the voices grew louder. Down here. Jonah glanced at Leo, fear twisting his features, then at the notebook. Dana trusted Jonah's palate, his integrity. She'd whispered bitterness under the floor not as a warning to hide, but a plea to expose. He tucked the notebook under his jacket and sprinted for the stairs. Leo hesitated, then followed. Flashlights blinded them. Hands where we can see. Jonah raised his arms, notebook visible. Evidence, he said. This is why Dana collapsed. At the precinct, Jonah spent 3 hours giving a statement. The lab notes corroborated his theory. The experimental hop contained unusually high iso-alpha acid precursors, and in combination with certain tannins from oak staves, they converted into a cardiotoxic compound. Dana's ceremonial stein, aged on oak for symbolic flair, had reached critical concentration. The batch upstairs, held in stainless kegs, was potent but not lethal. The detective, a former homebrewer, shook his head. Hell of a science experiment. Late afternoon, Jonah walked out into watery sunlight. His phone buzzed. Text from the hospital, from Dana's number. One sentence. Thank you. 2 days later, Brink and Barrow held a closed press conference. Dana, pale but upright, addressed a semicircle of reporters. Jonah stood to the side, invited as witness. We pushed boundaries and paid the price, Dana said. We assumed bitterness was a flavor, not a force. We were wrong. Thanks to Jonah Cliff, we understand what happened and will cooperate fully with authorities. Brink and Barrow will survive, but Hops of Hades is condemned to history. A reporter asked if the recipe would be destroyed. Dana smiled ruefully. Bitterness that nearly kills belongs nowhere near a tap room. We're brewers, not executioners. After the scrum dispersed, Dana joined Jonah by the keg washer. You could have walked away, she said. Why didn't you? Tour guides don't abandon their groups, he said. even when the route goes underground. She laughed, then winced, bruised ribs from CPR. I owe you more than I can name. The investors want your testimony to show we acted responsibly. Also, I'm implementing new sensory panels. Will you chair one? Jonah tilted his head. As in, paid to drink and warn you before you invent the next tongue grenade. Exactly. Count me in, with 2 conditions. 1. No more secret cellars. 2. We rename your next IPA Under the Floor, but we keep the bitterness reasonable. Donna extended her hand. Deal. They shook. Jonah felt a pulse of satisfaction, not triumph, just the steady beat of integrity. He had tapped hidden bitterness and let its truth flow, cleansing the lies that pooled in shadows. Out on the brew floor, new batches burbled, pale ales, porters, gentle pilsners. For now, that was enough. The Emerald City still shimmered, and its beer would too, bright, brave, and alive.